The Lexus LS, the legendary model that launched Lexus into the world, shook the world of the high-end luxury car market back in 1989. But how is the current generation Lexus LS doing? In today's video, we're going to take a look at every corner of the current generation Lexus LS. How is it holding up? How competitive it is in this heavily competitive car segment of the high-end luxury car, and most importantly, is it making Grandpa LS400 proud? But before we get started, if you're new to the channel, welcome. Consider subscribing to the channel. Check out some of my other videos. If you are a returning subscriber, well, thank you so much for watching another one of my videos. And without further ado, let's get right into it. Let's talk about the powertrains or the powertrain configurations of the Lexus LS. There are two main models. There is the LS500H and then there is the LS500. Let's talk about the hybrid variant first. So the hybrid variant has a 3.5 liter V6 8GR FXE. It is an Atkinson cycle on-demand engine, and in a nutshell, it is actually a modified version of a very popular engine, the 2GR FKS, found in models like the Toyota Highlander, the Toyota Avalon, the Lexus IS350, and many other models. One thing notable about this hybrid system is the battery. The battery nominal voltage is 310 volts, which is actually significantly higher than other conventional hybrid models. But this model is anything but conventional when it comes to hybrid. The battery is actually a double-decker. It has two stacks on top of each other. It sits all the way behind the back seat in the trunk. The hybrid transmission in the Lexus LS500H is a unique setup when compared to other Toyota and Lexus hybrid models. It basically has a similar operation to the one all the way back to the original Prius hybrid back in 2000. However, it has the two motors. One of them drives, one of them generates, starts the engine, and does the reductions to achieve different gear ratios. But in addition to that, there is a small unit behind it, which is essentially a small 4-speed transmission. They actually call it a 4-step transmission. The setup is very similar to the LS600H of the previous generation, except the previous generation had 2 gears or 2 steps. This generation has 4 steps, which is a major improvement. And if you want to learn more about how Toyota and Lexus hybrids work in details, I have a full series. I will leave a link in the description below. Then there is the LS500 model, like this one. This one has a 3.5 or 3.4 liter engine V6 twin turbo called the V35A FTS. This was an all-new engine when it came out in the 2018 year when this Lexus LS first launched. This engine is mated to a 10-speed transmission, which is actually a very compact and small unit. So compact that the transmission oil pan is actually made out of plastic and the strainer is built into it to keep everything compact and small. Now, the all-wheel drive variants of both models, believe it or not, shares the same transfer case. It's basically a transfer case that connects to the back of the transmission, sends power to the front wheels, and life is good. Whether hybrid or non-hybrid variant, it's the same setup, very simple, actually very old school, but it works very well. Let's talk about the exterior of the Lexus LS. Starting with the most notable feature in any modern Lexus, actually, the spindle grille. The spindle grille is enormous, and it is a like it or really dislike it one. For me, I like it for one reason. It gives the Lexus lineup a distinction, a unique look. Basically, you cannot mistake this car for anything else but a Lexus when you look at the spindle grille. Now, this generation Lexus LS, it is longer than the previous generation, but it is lower to the ground. And it is actually the first Lexus LS to have a swooping design, coupe-like roof, kind of a curved roof design, because the previous generations, going all the way back to the LS400, they slightly had a boxy, straight look without really curves or anything, and they slightly resembled a W140 S-Class. That's just my humble opinion. Let's talk about the interior of the Lexus LS, because in my opinion, this is where this Lexus LS really shines. I mean, the quality and craftsmanship of the interior is really top quality, and compared to the previous generation, it is a significant improvement, where the previous generation felt a little bit older, a little bit lesser, a little bit more mainstream at times. This is extremely elegant, extremely beautiful, and the materials here are top notch. Let's talk about some notable features. You know you're climbing into a special car when as soon as you open the driver's door, the seatbelt buckle whirs out to welcome you, and as you sit down and buckle your seat, the seatbelt gives you a gentle and warm hug. Then you are welcomed by a sea of not just leather, only the softest and the nicest leather you will find in any car. And honestly, after spending some time in this car, it's going to be very hard to get out of it and turn the keys back, because this is extremely nice. Then there's the whole design of the dash. It is very elegant, very not over the top. The infotainment screen sits in the middle of the dash. It is a good size. It is not, again, over the top like some competitors in this segment, and I like that. It is a reserved, not over the top screen, because if we're saying the truth, many car owners with large screens and all gizmos secretly don't use most of them, only when someone new sits in their car for the first time. When you get in the LS, you will make no mistake that this is a German car or an American car. It is extremely Japanese. For example, when you look at these beautiful swooping lines across the dash, and then you see the two HVAC vents right here, when you change the direction of the HVAC vent, it actually does not interrupt the beautiful design line all across. This is very high level attention to detail, and I like it. Then we move on to the gauge cluster. There's a medium-sized screen in the middle, and then there are two odd-looking mechanical gauges for the fuel and the temperature. And many people wonder, why is there not just a big screen that makes all this? Well, actually, there's a small hidden Easter egg in this gauge cluster, because if you look at the two mechanical gauges on the side, the fuel gauge and the temperature gauge, they're an Easter egg to the original Grandpa LS400, which had the exact same gauges with almost the same font, exactly at the same location. So that is actually a throwback, and I feel like it was intentional. And then, of course, if you own a Lexus LS, you couldn't be bothered to turn the interior lights or the map lights by pressing a button. You just tap on the light and the light comes on. That is actually a very cool feature. What about living day-to-day driving the Lexus LS? I love the mix of elegance and a little touch of old school here, because simple things need to remain simple in cars, even in high-end cars. For example, the HVAC controls right here are very simple to use. You don't need to go navigate through 17 menus in the infotainment system to access the basic functions. They're all laid out very clearly, very nicely, and very easy to use for anybody that's not familiar with this car. Most of the controls that you will use daily are actually laid out very simply, with the exception of the cooling and heating for the seats, which is in the infotainment system, unfortunately. Getting into the Lexus LS, I didn't feel like I had a long learning curve to learn how everything works and how to operate this. Everything was very simple, very basic, but very functional and very high-end. Everything you touch in the Lexus feels very high quality and superior, significantly superior to the previous models. And then there's one strange thing in the passenger seat where I'm sitting right now. If you look at the back of the seat, there's actually two cuts in the leather that are not replicated on the driver's seat. And I wondered about that. But to explain that, let's move to the back seat and I'll show you why there are these two cuts. The model that we are testing is equipped with the executive package, which has a reclining back seat. By the way, this can actually be a chauffeur-driven car. That's what the executive package is meant for. So the seat reclines, and this becomes like a cocoon. If you are a businessman driving home, your chauffeur is driving you home, you can sit here, recline your legs up with the ottoman, and just for a touch more of privacy, you can put the shades up, which were up electronically and close. And one of my favorite shades is a tiny little shade for the tiny little window all the way in the back that whirs away to shade you from the sun and cocoons you further in the Lexus LS500. In the middle of the center console, the executive package, you have a control center, a small screen that lets you control all the multiple features and gizmos with the back seat. Things like heated seats, cooled seats, and of course, a massaging rear seat, both driver and passenger side. And the two front cuts in the front passenger seat that we talked about earlier are actually there, so the headrest would fall all the way down, and then this pesky passenger seat would just disappear away as you recline your seat in comfort in your Lexus LS, which is actually a very nice feature. What about overall normal seat comfort if you actually did not have the executive package with the reclining seat? Well, legroom, of course, is significantly large. This model actually dropped the whole long base, short base, cheaper, longer, better, worse model. It just has one wheelbase and it is large. There's no more a short wheelbase. One thing that is in the back that is a little bit of a drawback because of the design of the exterior that we talked about. The headroom is not very ample in this seat, not like the previous generation, which was just a giant box. This is more, because of the swooping roofline, the headroom here is a little bit compromised. And then, as you open the door and exit the Lexus LS, the air suspension whirs to lower the car and level it. And speaking of the air suspension, there is a significant improvement to this generation LS over the previous one with the optional air suspension. The previous generation took forever to raise the car, to lower it. It was really slow. In this generation, it is actually very fast and very impressive how quick this thing rises up and lowers down when you need it to. It is not all rainbows and butterflies with the Lexus LS. Let's talk about some things I did not like about the Lexus LS. Even with the revisions in 2021 model, like the one behind me, with the improved suspension, improved transmission, improved many things that a lot of owners did not like in the first run of the LS500, there is one thing that is missing from the Lexus LS: opulence. This is obviously not a sporty sedan. Even though when you sit in the driver's seat and directly in the driver's line of sight there is two words, Sport and Sport Plus, this is obviously not a sporty sedan. This is a comfort-oriented and top-level luxury sedan. It directly competes head-to-head with the Mercedes-Benz S-Class. And if we go back to the Lexus LS400, which took on the Mercedes S-Class head-on and actually won, this LS generation is having a hard time competing with the S-Class while it's in motion. And even though the quality of materials that you touch, you feel, you use, and the quality of things that you don't see but hope they never break down is better than the S-Class, it just really lacks in the driving experience department. It is not as opulent as the S-Class. It is close, however. In the looks department, I think it does much better than the S-Class, which in the 2021 year, it looks like a very expensive Sonata. And there are some other things about the Lexus LS that I particularly did not like. One of them is the Lexus touch pad thing in the middle. It really doesn't work very well. And one thing I have to note is in the 2021 revision of the Lexus LS, the screen is now touch screen with Apple CarPlay, with Amazon Alexa, which is a welcome improvement. But that pad is still there. It is really not good. It doesn't work well. And I wish in the next generation LS, Lexus would actually come up with a better system. Then there is another problem, the one that I call the parts bin special. Throughout the Lexus LS, there are things that you will use daily that are shared with many other Lexus models and even some Toyota models. Let's take a look at the infotainment system, for example. It is essentially the same exact infotainment system found in a $20,000 Corolla, Toyota Corolla, with nicer fonts, nicer background, few added stuff to it, but it doesn't take much for you going around it to really see the similarity. You go to the settings menu, it looks exactly the same with the same orientation, nothing have changed. And this goes on and on across the car of other aspects. It just, when you share parts with other lesser models and a whole other brand that is an economy brand, it makes your flagship sedan lose its magic. And that's okay if this is an outgoing model. But even when it came out in 2018, it still shared a lot with the models around it. So what is the final verdict on the Lexus LS? Well, the Lexus LS in the current generation has its shortcoming, but I think it makes the original LS400 very proud. It is very refined inside. It is beautiful to look at both inside and outside. It is a nice, comfortable, relaxing drive, not thrilling, doesn't have that opulent drive, but it is nonetheless very nice. And I think it is the best luxury sedan to come out of Japan in 2021. And I have compared the Lexus LS to the Mercedes S-Class throughout this video, but I left one factor intentionally to the end. The S-Class could be better than the Lexus LS until you apply the cost factor. And with the cost included, I think this generation Lexus LS pulled something similar to the LS400 back in 1989. When you take an S-Class and equip it to the same level as the Lexus LS, like the one behind me, it is significantly more expensive. However, even with the Lexus LS shortcomings, the Mercedes-Benz S-Class is not significantly better than the Lexus LS. It's just a little bit better. Honestly, folks, I see the Lexus LS making a lot more sense closer to its base price, because at its base price it is a lot of car, and at that point it is significantly cheaper than its rivals. And for that base model, you still get so much. You still get the refined interior, you still get very nice features, you still get a very nice car. Perhaps not the most thrilling, perhaps has its shortcomings here and there, but overall, for the price, I think this is a very nice luxury sedan. And I will say one thing. At this point of the review, I'm going to turn off the review and I'm going to turn on my nature. I work exclusively on Toyota, Lexus, and Scion products as a Master Diagnostic Technician. I actually fix these cars for a living. I will say one thing. When this Lexus came out, Consumer Reports and many other medias reported that the reliability is a lot less than the previous generation, that it was a shame and it is really not a good car reliability-wise. I just want to set the record straight from real-world experience working on these things. There is no such thing. It's not a perfect car. No car is. But the truth is, there is no chronic problems. There is no big disasters that there are hundreds of LSs all across the dealerships with things torn out and it's falling apart. It is business as usual with this Lexus LS, just like the previous generation. Here's the God honest truth, people. This is a significantly more reliable car in its segment than its rivals. However, the cost of ownership of this Lexus LS will be higher than, say, an ES350, an IS350, or even when you cross over to the Toyota side. Of course, this is a bigger car, it is heavier, it is not exactly meant to be economical in its ownership. So costs will be a little higher, but that doesn't mean it is not a reliable car. And if the reason you are holding back or you decided not to buy a Lexus LS because of those alleged unreliability and concerns, I think they are unfounded, and I wish you would reconsider, because this is actually a very nice car when you buy it for the right reasons. I hope this video was helpful and informative. I hope you learned something new. If you like this video, consider giving it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing to the channel. Check out some of my other videos, and until the next video, folks, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and you have yourself a wonderful day.